Welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the topics that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm CJ Mitica, and today, ASI media executive editor Teresa Hagel and I will be discussing our biggest takeaways from last week's ASI Power Summit. So, Teresa, have you recovered yet from being in California and being at our Power Summit?
Uh, yeah, it took me about a week, but things are better now. It's always hard because I did a red eye flight back, and just the whole Power Summit. It's packed full of activities and information, so getting back into the normal swing of things is kind of a process. But I'm better now. How about you?
I feel the same way. I did not take the red eye, but I feel like ever since I've been back, I've just been hit the ground running with work and family, which is just normal and great. Yes, the Power Summit, it's always a lot. There's always a lot happening, but really, it went fabulously. Like every attendee I talked to was just thrilled to be there. Had super nice things to say. It was our first live Power Summit in 4 years.
Yep.
So we had this plan for 2020 and then 21, and so we had, we just had to keep just pushing it back, and finally, this was the year everything came together, and it just went, I thought, really well. What was your overall thoughts just about the Power Summit this year?
I think that, yeah, I always think of it as sort of as like a summer camp and everyone comes back together. So there's lots of great like networking. People are so excited to see each other. But I know that there's a lot of great connections that are being made too. So like a lot of the people I talked to, were happy that, they might know each other in all other contexts, but it's really hard to get all of that, those high level people in the industry all together in the same, building at one time. So that's one big benefit. But there was also so much really good education that we provided, and I think people really took away a lot of like kernels of knowledge that they'll be able to use in their business.
Yeah, for sure. And like networking is a huge appeal at the Power Summit, but as you mentioned, the education is super important too. And we had a number of great sessions this year, and a lot of interesting experts, a lot of interesting panels. You did a whole sustainability power hour. I had a future of work session. So there's a lot of interesting topics, and I think people found it really helpful. And that's kind of the purpose of this podcast today. So we're going to be talking about our top takeaways from the Power Summit, really just based on the sort of the educational sessions and the panels and the talks and just the ideas and strategies that we gleaned from it. I do want to remind our listeners and our viewers, you can register for next year. I think I have our registration up. It's going to be at asipowersummit.com. So this past year we had it in Pasadena, California. Next year it's going to be at the Rancho Bernardo in San Diego. We've been there before, and it was
It's a
very
very
high.
nice place. I've been there. It's nice.
Yeah, I have not been, so I'm looking forward to going next year. So yeah, definitely something to look forward to. But we're not talking about next year. We're talking about this year's Power Summit, and so we're each going to have our top three takeaways and just the biggest sort of ideas and insights we gleaned from this year's Power Summit. Teresa, I'll give you the honors. You can go first.
Okay. So one of the biggest things that I took away from this was just the overwhelming growth of artificial intelligence in the industry, like AI and automation. They have a lot of applications for the promo world, and there's a lot of top 40 companies that are investing in the technology. I know specifically in one of the panels, Sanmar is talking about their new distribution center in Virginia, and they're, investing like, I think, 100 million to automate the distribution center, so which will save like a ton on labor costs. So it's kind of like that new model. And I know obviously we've had our AI week earlier this year where we talked about generative AI and how automation is changing, the way these distribution centers work. So I just think it's going to continue to get bigger and more applications for everyone. As far as like ChatGPT and OpenAI, We did have a session kind of talking about how that could be used by the industry, and it's really helpful, I think, with sales and working with customers. I think there was like a sort of a, it wasn't like the real application, but it was kind of a demo of what could be, where you would have like this AI bot kind of behind the scenes. So when you talked to a customer, it could pull up information very quickly, like, oh, the last time this person ordered with us, they bought this, this, and this. And so then instead of having to look it up yourself, you can look like you already have it in your mind, because the AI is sort of feeding you, previous order history and real-time inventory and all kinds of things like that, which is information you probably already have, but you don't have an easy way to necessarily to gather it. So I thought that was a really interesting way AI could be used to supplement a person's job and not like replace it.
Yeah, so Rachel Joy Victor was our speaker for that session. She's an independent strategist and designer. I had the fortune of meeting with her a number of times over the summer and fall leading up to that. And she has some really interesting things to say just about sort of how AI is being utilized and where she thought AI could go for our industry. And I agree with you and I agree with her. Like we have a lot of this, we being the industry and industry companies, we have a lot of this information already. Their companies are just sitting on it. And I think the trick with AI is, well, how can you mobilize it and use it as a tool, as Rachel talked about, to make it helpful to you? Because if you can synthesize all that information together and make it immediately accessible, right, in a useful way, like that's amazing. And in the presentation she did, like you said, she had this sort of AI chatbot that was feeding distributor information. And to be able to get that sort of at your fingertips without you even having to ask, right? That's when that becomes possible, that's a huge game changer for both suppliers and distributors in our industry.
Right, right. Because I mean, like a lot of things that you see or have seen kind of in the media is just sort of like party tricks with AI. Like, oh, have it write a silly poem for you or have it do this. It's like, okay, that's cute, but like that's not actually useful for people. Um, so something like what they were showing at the session in the Power Summit, that's useful. That has value to businesses.
Yeah, and so we held a counselor advisory board call earlier in October, and I asked this question to our advisory board members and just about AI. How are they using it? Where do they think they can go? They're all dabbling with it in some ways, but I would say it's been sort of more on the fringes, right? They're sort of trying to figure out where they can have sort of an immediate benefit to using AI. They all see the potential of it, but no one's, I say right now, is doing something that's like is huge and it's going to completely revolutionize the industry. I think that's gonna take time. In the
Right. Well,
meantime,
and another
good.
another good point that Jake made, who was moderating that session, was just that you have to like give your employees the ability to kind of experiment with this right now, because
Totally.
we're in such the early stages. Let them experiment. There's going to be some failures, but it could unlock some creativity and some really great things that you would never think of. So you shouldn't be like necessarily dictating like this is what we're going to do with it, this is how we're going to do it. Kind of give some freedom within reason. Like obviously you don't want to open up your data to some kind of unsecured program, but like look at ways that you can kind of play with it and see where it might take you.
Yeah, like look, I think there are concerns. The concerns for me, if you're a business, like you're going to be exposing your data or your proprietary secrets when you feed AI this information. So you want that closed system where it can't like live out in the wild. So that's a concern. I think President Biden just I think signed some sort of legislation or to issue out some new guidelines because I think there's issues of like national security and concerns.
Mhm.
And I think the overarching message with that is that there's so much unexplored territory and potential that I think you just have to make sure that when you take these steps forward, we're not doing it in a dangerous way. So if for your company, I agree, experiment, right? But like it's low stakes experimentation. Figure out the ways you can get you that cost savings or that time savings benefit immediately in a safe way. And then I think at some point down the line, there's going to be that massive solution it's going to be it's like a paradigm shift for this industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would add like ASI also has been doing AI. It's an ESP plus, and you can go on right now and search. And so instead of just searching like a keyword, right? You can tell like I need I need this a fun drinkware for an upcoming charity run, and it'll give you a plenty of product ideas. So it matches really like variety of products to event and theme. And so that's a use of AI right now that we're doing ASI that it is going to be helpful for our distributors in the industry.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to use my top takeaway, and so this is actually based on our keynote session that was from Erica Ayers Baden, who's from or Baden, I should say, who is the CEO of Barstool Sports. And so my takeaway is authenticity is the key to a brand success, even when your brand has noticeable flaws. I just thought Erica's a very interesting figure because she's a woman working in a very male dominated field and company. So I thought that was fascinating. I thought her background was fascinating, coming up in the tech world and sort of the unusual path she took to her role of leadership in getting to the C-suite. But what I thought was most interesting is that Barstool Sports started out this very sort of regional publication. It had a very like specific audience from like guys and sports and other things that guys talk about at the bar. That's where he got its name. And she was saying for years like the Barstool had this reputation of just sort of its being like either low rent or low quality, right, and having these sort of noticeable flaws. And she called it the Barstool difference. And the way she talked about it, it's really been part of their success because like people don't expect they have certain expectations, but they don't ding Barstool for it, and they've been able to grow the brand to these insane levels in terms of popularity and all these sort of branding extensions, still while keeping like Barstool in this sort of its unique its unique reputation and staying true to its origins, even though some of those origins have like really I'd say other flaws or like unique characteristics that other brands may shy away from. So I thought that part was fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Are you a Barstool Sports guy? I've never actually been on the site. I mean, I've heard of it. I've heard of its scandals, but I've never actually like gone on it.
Yeah, so I'm not like a stoolie. I've looked at it like it's like occasional links, and I just listen to like a podcast or two out of curiosity. So I'm not like a devoted fan, but I know people who are, and I think it's easy to see why because it has a very unique point of view. It's really like it's really funny and irreverent. And again, like I see the reasons for its success, but like in a corporate world, right? When like
Mhm.
this brand's come like mammoth, like I'm amazed that they've been able to sort of stay true to who they are.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was really interesting hearing her speak because she's very unapologetic about, any kind of past mistakes that they've made or even, ones that are current because like as she said, she's not like I'm not spending my time apologizing for this or cleaning up the floor of what was there. I'm trying to build it into something bigger. And she also kind of made that point about the way the internet works these days is that negative like getting a reaction is what you want, so it's not necessarily about people liking what you're doing. If people are kind of like hate watching and hate commenting, that still gooses the algorithm just as well as if they're saying how great it is. So it's like personally like I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of like like I couldn't handle like getting a bunch of comments of people talking about how much they hated something I
Yeah.
did, but I get like why that works for a certain type of like business model, but it's just like interesting to hear someone leaning into that whole type of content and engagement.
Yeah, again, I think it works because it's true to like what Barstool was and is and what the brand is. And for distributors in our industry, they're working with brands all the time. And I think it's just something we talk about, but like when you're picking merch or helping with an event, right? You want that those products, those solutions to be true to what the brand is. I think you have to do the digging. You have to ask the right questions to find out what is this brand? What makes it tick? Why do people love it? Then you can find the items that
Right.
that help that cause. And again, authenticity. That I think
Yeah.
that's the key thing that I took from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like another thing she was saying was like, so they're kind of known for that gritty, like not necessarily high quality
Yeah,
video and production. But like but ESPN, like during the pandemic, if they were doing things that were like a low quality video or audio, they were really dinged for it because they're supposed to be, up here. So yeah, you definitely have to make sure the brand matches what the brand's mission and like perception and kind of personality is. And that goes with promotional products too.
yeah, definitely. All right, so Teresa, why don't you give me your second top takeaway?
Okay, well, my second one, of course, since I did the sustainability power hour, I can't ignore sustainability.
Right.
But I think that was definitely, a big talking point. But sustainability, of course, means different things to different people. You need to ask the right questions, define what you're actually looking for and what your client is looking for, and also be measuring the impact that whatever you're doing is having. So something Kathy Chang of Redwood Classic said was sustainability is simple, but it's not easy, which I heard a lot of people really found that profound, and we're talking about it later, and it kind of resonated with them because it is like the idea of making the world a better place and having less of an impact on the environment. Like, yeah, like that's all kind of what I think people want to do. But like, how do you do that, and how do you measure that, and how do you commit to those things? That's where it gets more complicated. Um, but we had a lot of speakers who were approaching it in different ways, whether it was, um, you know, making fashion more circular and recycling textiles or upcycling them, or swag cycle with Ben Grossman, where they're taking uh like if a company's rebranding and has like old merch that they don't want in circulation anymore, can it be donated to charity, or can it be recycled, or can something new be done with it so that it doesn't end up in a landfill? So I think it was interesting to see everyone's different approaches to what sustainability is and how we can make it more of a part of the conversation in promo.
Yeah, what I loved about your three sessions, that sustainability power hour, is all the different voices that we got to hear, because they're all doing like cool and impactful stuff in really unique ways. Whether it's something like Swag Cycle in terms of like that end of life solution, or like Iris Kornbluth, right, with Everywhere
Mhm.
Apparel, and her company is hinging on 100% recycled material and having that circular approach. So there's tons of room for, I think, innovation, in different ways to approach sustainability. And what I took from it, and based on your takeaway that sustainability means different things to different people, is that it's like impossible to do everything at once. There's so many different ways to go about it, and companies that like don't know where to start and try to do everything, like they're going to just get frustrated and throw their hands up, because
Mhm.
there's just, it's almost too much to do. And what I think I appreciate, and what I urge companies to do, is pick like one thing and be like, this is the thing that I'm going to hang my hat on when it comes to sustainability. Whether that's specifically using like recycled materials or fibers,
Mhm.
whether that's eliminating waste in your company's operations. Maybe it's the clientele you work with, and saying that I'm only going to work with clientele who matches my values. Like, pick that one thing and then just go at it like 100%. And then once you feel like you mastered that, then take on something else.
Right. And I mean, something people have always said to me is that it's a journey, right? It's not like you're not, it's
Yes.
the sustainability, it's about this journey. So it is like kind of adding more things as you go. But the other thing that's definitely important is that whatever you pick, you need to kind of set like the baseline of what you're doing now so that you can measure your progress. Like if you don't know how much you're throwing away currently, it's not really going to matter if you start making reductions, because nobody like it's meaningless. So you want to be able to measure what you're doing, and ideally be transparent about the progress you're making, because your clients are going to want to see they're going to want to see like what you're doing, what the progress is, because you don't want to be greenwashing. And that is something also I've noticed, just not even with just the Power Summit, but like a lot of suppliers now are putting out specific sustainability reports so that they can show what progress they're making so that the distributors can take that and, pass it on to, their end users, their clients, to show like, look, we are actually doing something, and this is, the progress we're making here.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ben Grossman was talking about that third-party verification that suppliers are now securing, and I think that's actually crucial to working with distributors, right? To having something that's sort of been verified. I do think that's very important, and I think your point is great. I think there's too often there's the impulse to say, well, we can't do this perfectly. We're not going to try, and that's the wrong approach. It is a journey. You're not going to do it perfectly, but that doesn't mean that you can't get better. And whatever you can do is going to make a difference. So that there's no reason not to start trying.
Right. And of course, the other thing with messaging too is that a lot of promotional products have that sustainable element because they are reusable. That's not the end of it, but like that is kind of a good start. Like if you're not like using a bunch of single-use plastic things, reusable water bottle, reusable tote bags, especially if they're high quality and they're ones people want and are going to keep and use, like that is a sustainability factor. So that is something that can be talked up more in the industry too.
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, sustainability is not going away. And it's not just a trend. It is a movement. You've been documenting it on our Promo for the Planet page on ASI Central, and it's something that we're going to be covering as a publication. Just we've been covering it, and we're still going to be covering it because the companies are talking about it a lot.
Right, because it's a journey. So there's more to cover.
Definitely, for sure. All right, I'm gonna do my second takeaway now, and pretty simple. Slow sales or an off year isn't a death sentence. So this was actually a topic of conversation during our well, I would say throughout the whole conference, but definitely we had a Power 50 session where Joanne Lance, who's CEO of Geiger, was moderating, and we had 4 different Power 50 leaders on there. Pierre Montauban, the new CEO of Kuzi, Duran Hines, who's now been the president of Staples Promotional Products, Jeremy Lott from Sanmar, and Joanne Gilly, who's running Overture. And one of the topics was just like, where are sales right now? And to be honest, not great. We ASI just released our Q3 data, and the industry was only up 2.4% for Q3, which is the slowest quarter in this post-COVID era. And the Power 50 leaders, basically admitted the same things, that sales were flat or not where they expected. But that's okay. Like they acknowledge there's going to be these ups and downs, and they plan through their budget and their forecasting to account for that. And Jeremy Lott talked about this. Even Joanne talked about this as well. She recalled, I think one of the first Power Summits that she went, and she thought that it was going to be a great year, and the people were talking on stage about how it wasn't. Things aren't looking great. That the economic outlook was not great for our industry. And she went back and she changed all her company's forecasts and budgets, and it was a great thing. It was actually right before the Great Recession of 2008. I remember now.
Yeah.
And so they admitted like sales aren't great, but it doesn't have to be this huge negative. Like if you plan accordingly, your companies are gonna survive because you're preparing for the worst.
Right. Well, I mean, also things are, I think they were mostly saying things were flat, or with ours, it is still up. It's just not up as
just
much.
not up as much. Yes.
I mean, like it can't be like this all the time. There's always going to be some like drops down or lower growth, but yeah, like planning for it and maybe using that time to review what your processes are, or what you're doing, or who you're targeting. Like there's always, you could look at this as maybe times for reflection, maybe, because sometimes when you're in the thick of like super rapid growth, there's not that time to be like, wait a minute, am I, is this staying true to our mission, or are we actually targeting the right people? You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes like the slower periods can be a great opportunity for reflection and retargeting what you really want to be doing.
Right, and even doubling down and being aggressive, and whether it's in advertising or seeking out mergers and acquisitions. Like if you plan correctly, you can turn it into an opportunity. And I thought it was very interesting. Jeremy on stage admitted, like I've been wrong so many times in the past few years because who anticipated COVID, right? Who
Right.
anticipated the supply chain challenges? He admitted, I've been wrong so many times, and yet he runs the top supplier in our industry, and Sanmar's been a paragon of consistency. And so that's okay. That's why you have different models, right? That's why you forecast and plan out these different contingencies. And if you look at our ASI research survey we did for Q3, but we asked them about their outlook for Q4 and beyond. They were more optimistic. The counselor confidence index went up. So people in the industry overall are optimistic. They're not. They've been holding their breath for a recession that hasn't come. And so yes, we can have a slow quarter, but overall, I think people feel we're in a good place, and things are going to be fine in next year and beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Teresa, let's hit me with your third and final takeaway.
All right. So this one I thought was very interesting, talking about next gen consumers, which I guess we were defining as Gen Z and millennials.
Or at least younger millennials, right?
Younger millennials, right? Because
Yeah.
I guess millennials are some of them are 40 now, which is not that young.
Yeah.
But even though the next gen younger consumers tend to prefer experiences over items, that's not something that we should be alarmed about in the promo industry, because branded merch is obviously a key component of experiences. Like, who doesn't like? I think of like the Taylor Swift concerts. That's a huge experience. But how long were people waiting in the merch line because they want that shirt or that sweatshirt that proves they were there? So I think it can be a little bit disturbing or scary. Like, people always want to look at like, oh, the younger generations, they're doing things differently, they're doing things in a way that like scares me and I don't like it. And why can't they just use napkins like older people did or whatever, like how like millennials killed all these industries. It's like, they're still just people, they're not that different from us. But yeah, like, so experiences are a big thing with them, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of promo. There's still lots of opportunities to tie branded merch, promo products, something cool and tangible to an experience.
Yeah.
And
So
even something beforehand. Like, what if it's like something that leads up to the experience or something that you get afterwards? Like, there's a whole lot of possibilities there.
yeah. So that session, so it was led by Joyce Ng, who's the head of Springboard Market Research, based in San Francisco, and she does a lot of surveys and product research for younger buyers. And she did do some custom research for us. We're actually going to leverage that into an article that we're gonna run on our website at some point. Yeah, she mentioned that those younger buyers, the next gen buyers, they would opt for that experience over that thing. But that doesn't mean they don't want things, right? It doesn't mean they don't want any merch. And I think she also asked them about like quality merch, and they said that it was like 70%, I believe, would have a better impression of the advertiser if they got a quality piece of merch. And I think we've seen that when we've done the ad impression studies, right? When sometimes people are like, oh, like, promo products, trinkets, and trash, they have a very negative view. But then you ask them specifics, and they do remember something they received that they really like and use. And so when you have to dig a little deeper, and then I think they realize, oh, yes, I use merch all the time. There are certain things that I absolutely love.
Right, right. And I mean, like, some of the name brand stuff too, I think is really, really big with the younger audience. Because I mean, like, how many people, like, my daughter's in 6th grade, like every single kid has a Hydro Flask water bottle that they're toting around. You know what I mean? Like, so they all want that stuff. They all have it. I think it's that disconnect of what actually is a promotional product. And if you're defining it as like this very cheap throwaway thing, yeah, of course nobody necessarily wants that, but the market is so much broader and there are like these really nice things that are in it.
Yeah, and she has some other interesting findings, like that these next gen has this very global mentality, and they're also very, as not surprisingly, very sort of ethically and sustainability minded. So I mean, that's not news, but I think companies in our industry and the clients you're working with really got to take that into account, because these are the people who are going to be making the purchasing decisions at their businesses if they're not already. And so you really have to sort of promote this more global view and more sustainable mindset.
Yeah, yeah. They want to hear like the stories behind the merch and why is this important? Why is this ethical? Why is this sustainable?
Does your daughter there yet, or is she still too young to like really sort of espouse that viewpoint?
No, I mean, like, it's maybe not fully formed, but she definitely takes notice. Like, I'll bring her back things that I get at trade shows and be like, oh, look at this. This pen is, made from a plastic that will like break down in the ocean if it gets thrown in there. And she's like, oh, that's so cool. Like, she definitely loves anything that has a sustainability story or is, something like ethically made. Like, um, I don't know that she necessarily like she's not really making a bunch of purchasing decisions on her
Sure.
own yet, but yeah, she does take notice of that and cares about it for sure.
Yeah, well, look, these young millennials and Gen Z, they care about it. The next generation, Generation Alpha, which I think our kids belong to,
Yeah,
they're definitely gonna care about it. So it's not like it's going away. It's really here to stay.
yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with my last takeaway, and this is based on the session that I moderated about just sort of the current like workplace like satisfaction and engagement. And basically, here's what I thought: take a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach when it comes to hiring and company culture. So I had some great panelists, and we talked about things that happened during the pandemic, right? The work from home and the fact that that like job candidates, employees were sort of holding all the power, and how that's starting to shift, right? People are coming back to the office, and it's now really in an employer's job market. But what's interesting is that the companies that we had on the panel, they were taking approaches that are kind of like immune to the market conditions. Kate Alaves, who's the CEO of Promo Shop, they have this robust recruitment like model where they're like engaging with like kids in middle school and high school. Those they're going to be those are people who are then going to go to college or go in the working world, and then they're going to be either working for a promo company or maybe become promo buyers. And she said it's been a tremendous difference maker for them. Same thing, Crystal D. So we had Mike Irvine, who's the EVP there. They have a full-time recruiter, and now they're getting people like within hours of a job opening that's being posted. And so it's interesting because like again, they're not just like waiting and crying woe is me. They're really being very aggressive and proactive, and it's making a huge difference with the number of candidates that they're getting, but also the quality of candidates that they're bringing into their companies.
Yeah, yeah. And I think another point that was made during that session was the importance of asking employees what they want,
Yeah,
as far as benefits and perks and just like that employee engagement. Don't just like kind of assume like, oh, we're gonna do this happy hour, we're gonna do this. Like I think it was Promo Shop that actually does like surveys
yeah,
to find out like what do you guys want to do, and then that's how they craft their next quarter's like activities and whatnot, which I think it's smart because like not everybody wants the same thing, and you know you think you might be doing something that like like, oh, this is cool, like I saw this on at some other companies doing this, but if like it's not, if it doesn't match what your client your workers actually want, like you're not actually a best place to work, then you're just doing something to look good and not actually engage and make people satisfied with their jobs.
yeah. In a similar vein, I remember Crystal D. So I think they bring their new employees in for like the first 6 months, and it really sort of immerses them in the culture. And we can have a debate on whether working from home versus being in the office, and what's the right model, and how often should they be in one versus the other. But what I like is at least the intentionality behind that approach, right? You're exposing your new teammates to everything that your company is all about. And after that certain amount of time, it's like, okay, well, we've trained you, we've shown you what our company stands for, and then where do we go from here? And then they offer that sort of flexibility depending on the position to say, like, do you want to be in the office? Do you want to be from home? I remember Mike saying like a lot of people actually want to be in the office because they like the environment, which is I think great if that works for them. But again, there's intentionality behind it. It's doing so, it's asking people what they want, and then making sure that they're involved. And I thought those were all great points that I heard during my session.
Yeah, and I think one last thing is just I don't think it has to be so combative, right? Like so many of the headlines are like, oh, the employees have the power now. Oh, the employers have the power. And it becomes like this very angry, like upsetting kind of dynamic. And I think that like another point that everyone on that panel was making is that, it doesn't have to be like that. Yes, everyone's going to have their different opinions about whether, remote work is better or being in the office, or whether this is better or whether that is better. But if you actually have like that strong focus on company culture and actually care what your employees want and how to kind of make everything work the best for like holistically for the employees and the employer, like it doesn't have to be this like push pull back and forth, everybody's angry at everyone else and like, oh, I have the power now I have the power. It doesn't have to be like that, even though like that's what kind of like the headlines that like make the most noise are sort of hinting at. But there's a way to kind of make things compromise and work for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, okay, another successful Power Summit in the books. Teresa and I just touched on just a few select takeaways from a number of topics, themes, and the discussions. And there's so much more we could talk about. So definitely check out our coverage of the Power Summit. So asicentral.com/news. You can see the most recent Power Summit stories. Go to our program tab, and you can see anything that has a headline Power Summit is coverage from the conference. You can see we covered pretty much all the sessions one way or another. Once again, reminder, registration for next year's Power Summit. You can go to asipowersummit.com. Get the details, and of course we hope to see you there. Teresa and I next year will be just relaxing by the pool, right, and not working. Is that the plan?
Oh, yeah, just total relaxation for sure.
All right, well, thank you, Teresa, for being there at the Power Summit, and thank you for helping out with the podcast today.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.